Dust drifted across the gravel as the late afternoon sun dipped behind the hills, casting long shadows across the quiet rural workshop. For weeks, this place had echoed with the grind of gears, the hiss of welding torches, and the sharp bark of tools meeting metal. Now, it was still. At the center of the garage sat a half-assembled custom tank Ray Carter's pride and obsession. Its matte steel frame loomed like a sleeping beast. Panels unfinished, wires tangled like veins left exposed. On the wall, a calendar marked with red ink read, 3 days to go, National Tank Tech Challenge. The competition was the biggest of its kind, a place where engineers, military mechanics, and innovators tested their creations in front of a national audience. Ray had won before, 3 times in fact, each time with a tank more advanced than the last. This year, he had something special, a design that could change his life, win a defense contract, maybe even retire with pride. But 2 nights ago, Ray collapsed in the middle of his garage. The doctor's orders were clear. No excitement, no stress, strict bed rest. Now the tools lay still. The hum of machinery was gone. The workshop, once alive with purpose, felt frozen in time. Emily stood in the open doorway watching the dust settle. 19 years old, her father's only child. She'd grown up in this garage, watching, learning, helping when he'd let her. She wasn't a professional mechanic, no formal training, but she knew this machine, every bolt, every wire. She'd been there through every step just in the background. She wore his old coveralls, sleeves rolled up, hair tied back in a rough bun. Grease already streaked her cheek from earlier attempts to clean up the workspace. Her eyes locked on the tank. It didn't just look unfinished, it looked abandoned. But in her chest, something stirred. Not fear, not doubt. Something else. Responsibility. Resolve. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, messages from friends, worried family. Most of them told her to give it up. Just be with your dad, they said. You can't fix something like this alone. She didn't respond. She stepped forward slowly, the gravel crunching beneath her boots. Inside, the scent of oil and metal was familiar, comforting. Her father's toolbox sat open, his blueprint rolled out on the workbench. Pages smudged and folded. She walked over, ran her fingers over the lines he'd drawn. She could hear his voice in her head. Every part talks to the next. Understand that, and it'll tell you what it needs. The silence didn't scare her. The challenge didn't scare her. She looked at the tank, then at the clock. 3 days. She tightened her ponytail, pulled on the gloves, and whispered under her breath, "Okay, let's do this." Then she picked up the wrench. The workshop lights buzzed faintly as Emily stood over the blueprint table, her hands planted on either side of the stained paper. Outside, the first light of dawn began to slip through the dusty windows, casting long golden beams across the cluttered garage. Her father's scribbled notes were everywhere on the bench, taped 2 toolboxes, pinned to the corkboard beside faded photos of past contests and newspaper clippings that declared him a small-town genius. But none of it could guide her. Now, Ray wasn't there to explain his shorthand or double-check her torque specs. It was just her and the half-built machine, waiting to be brought to life. Asterisk, she moved with quiet determination, wheeling over the stool and unlocking the rolling tool chest. Each drawer clanged as she opened it, revealing rows of wrenches, gauges, and specialized gear. She grabbed a torque wrench and got to work. Asterisk, underneath the tank, she slid herself on the creeper and stared up at the unfinished drivetrain. Her mind, sharp and methodical, began pulling pieces together. She remembered conversations, flashbacks of her dad explaining gear ratios over dinner, showing her how to feel a bolt's tension with just a wrist twist, laughing when she stripped one early on. But those mistakes had taught her something. Patience, asterisk. The garage was hot, her back ached, and the metallic scent clung to her skin, but she didn't stop. Her hands moved from component to component, checking alignments, reattaching a hydraulic line that had been left loose, welding in short, precise bursts. Sparks lit up the underside of the tank, painting her face in orange flashes. Asterisk, by midday, neighbors had started to gather just outside the garage. Some watched with interest. Others whispered, "She's Ray's kid," someone said, trying to finish his build. Laughter followed. A teenager, asterisk, but Emily didn't hear them. Her earbuds were in playing a playlist her dad once made of classic rock and engine sounds. She drowned out the doubts, kept her head low, and worked through the afternoon. Asterisk, the tank's core began to come together, slowly but steadily. She rebuilt the coolant pump after discovering a small crack. She rechecked every wire on the control board, color-coded by hand with a marker. She soldered new connections where her father had left placeholders. Asterisk, by the time the sun began to fall again, casting a red glow into the workshop, Emily stood back and wiped the sweat from her brow. Her hands were trembling from exhaustion. Her shirt was soaked through, but the tank was standing taller now, more whole than it had been in days. Asterisk, she sat down on a bench, pulled off her gloves, and stared at it. Asterisk, 1 day down, 2 to go. Asterisk, and she hadn't broken anything yet. Maybe, just maybe, she could do this. The sun rose over the contest grounds with the promise of heat and tension. The field buzzed with the noise of generators, steel clanking, and voices barking orders. Massive transport trucks lined the far edge, unloading tanks that gleamed like monster-sponsored machines, engineered by full teams with budgets. Flags fluttered above the registration booths, and drone cameras hovered overhead, capturing the preparations for the nation's most intense tank engineering challenge. Asterisk. Emily arrived in silence. Asterisk, her father's old pickup rolled slowly into the dusty lot, the trailer behind it groaning under the weight of the finished tank. It wasn't flashy. Its paint was worn, matte black with streaks of welding burns and finger-smudged grease. But it was real. Every panel had been touched by her hands, every wire reconnected by her alone. Asterisk, she jumped out of the truck wearing her father's stitched uniform jacket over her coveralls, hands still stained from last night's final tuning. She walked around to unstrap the tank and caught sight of the others. Teams in matching branded shirts, mechanics with earpieces, engineers monitoring diagnostics, on tablets, and then her alone, 19, no crew. Just sweat, instinct, and her dad's notes stuffed in her backpack. Asterisk, at the registration tent. A middle-aged man with a clipboard raised an eyebrow as she approached. "You here for Carter's team?" he asked, glancing around. "Where's Ray?" Asterisk, she looked him straight in the eye. "In the hospital," she said calmly. "But I'm driving." Asterisk, he hesitated. "You're his, asterisk, daughter." Asterisk, he blinked, then checked the list. Emily Carter, entry 17, a pause. "You're serious?" Asterisk, she didn't blink, dead serious. Asterisk, the buzz around her grew as she rolled the tank into its spot in the lineup. Some competitors sneered, others whispered, a few glanced with curiosity, but most didn't take her seriously. She was just a girl, standing beside a machine built for war. But they didn't know what she'd done to get here. They hadn't seen the long nights, the broken bolts, the pain in her shoulders that wouldn't go away. Asterisk, a horn echoed across the field. The announcer's voice boomed from the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to day 1 of the National Tank Tech Challenge. Drivers, prepare your machines." Asterisk, inside the cockpit, Emily climbed into the driver's seat, her hands steady on the controls. The interior still smelled of oil and heat. She pressed the ignition. The engine roared to life. Beneath her, steady strong, like it had never broken in the first place. Asterisk, she glanced out the hatch and saw a crowd gathering. Then, at the far edge of the audience, in a wheelchair beside a nurse, sat her father. His expression was unreadable, his eyes locked with hers. Asterisk, she didn't smile, she didn't wave. She just gave him a subtle nod, firm, confident. Asterisk, he knew what that meant. The tank rolled forward, toward the first challenge. The course stretched out ahead like a battlefield, steep hills, deep mud trenches, narrow turns, and moving targets. Emily gripped the controls, her jaw tight, her heart pounding against her ribs. The tank's engine hummed beneath her, powerful and ready. As the starting horn blared, she pushed forward, and the machine lunged into motion. Asterisk, obstacle after obstacle. She drove with precision. The crowd murmured, then grew louder with each pass she cleared. No one expected her to make it this far. Asterisk, then, halfway through, disaster struck. The engine sputtered. Warning lights blinked red. A fuel pressure failure. Asterisk, judges raised flags. Officials moved to stop her, but Emily didn't flinch. She threw the hatch open, jumped down, and slid under the tank with tools in hand. Cameras zoomed in. Silence fell. Asterisk, her hands worked fast, wiping grime, clamping a cracked line. Asterisk, the tank rumbled to a stop, dust swirling around it. Emily climbed out, her face streaked with sweat and oil, heart pounding. The crowd stood silent, then exploded into cheers. She spotted her father in the distance, seated in his wheelchair, eyes full of pride and tears. When the announcer declared her the winner, she didn't jump or scream. She walked straight to him, knelt down, and whispered, "We did it." He touched her shoulder, speechless. That moment said everything that night. News outlets across the country picked up the story. Headlines read, Asterisk teen girl stuns, tank engineering world. Asterisk mechanic's daughter defies odds, wins national title. Asterisk she came alone, she left a champion.